professional woman. Okay, Mr. Pola. Of course, that's very important. You know, you people need to get your permission. My family's from the South. You give people permission to call you by your first name. You never assume that. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I am up on Facebook now. So if you would check, what we need to do is check uh, the pastor's sound.
It's sad to say.
Okay.
Okay, will do.
Okay,
Alice from
Pastor
Oregon.
Williams, if you could speak to us,
I thought
please.
pantries were for less fortunate people,
Sure.
but anybody could be less fortunate in a day or even a second. Claire from Virginia.
Okay, now you're
The
going
Feeding
in and out.
America
I don't know.
network of
You might
food
be in a
banks
bad
helps provide over
spot.
6 billion meals to people in need each year.
A, B, C,
No
D,
one
E,
Okay,
F,
now
G,
you're in a
have
good
to
spot.
worry where their next meal will come from.
Now you're in a good
Together,
spot. Okay,
we
great.
can end hunger. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
All right, we can hear the Reverend.
Okay, very good.
This is your WCPT Progressive
Okay,
Calendar.
well, let's have a great show.
Friday, September 22nd at noon.
Yeah, let's do it.
Chicago welcomes Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth. The event takes place at Maggiano's Banquets, 111 West Grand Avenue in Chicago. Tickets are available for City Club members and non-members. Register now. Seating is limited. Thursday,
And when
September
the pastor's
28th at
on, could you put me on
9:30
mute,
a.m.
please? I'm gonna
Illinois
be
Congressman Mike
downloading a few
Quigley will be
documents.
hosting a senior fair and vaccine clinic to connect seniors
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
services
very
and
good.
services. It takes place at the Northeast Levy Center, 2019 West Lawrence Avenue in Chicago.
Very,
Seniors will
very
be able to collect handouts and information on how to obtain services and resources from federal, state,
Pastor
and local
Tish.
agencies.
Uh,
Free flu and COVID-19 shots
Oh,
will be
boy.
available in an adjacant room. The event is
Oh,
free,
yeah.
open to the public, and
How are you
registration
doing?
is not required.
I'm
Shanola Hampton.
I'm getting a little stronger
Every
each day.
day, millions
you
of
know,
people
God
face
bless you.
hunger.
You know,
Today, I will share with you some of their experiences.
it's all a lot, honey.
I'm stuck
no matter
between
how you
paying for
slice it.
medications or paying for food.
It's the truth.
John from Maine.
How are you?
After paying my
You know,
bills,
I'm
I can
doing
buy
all right.
groceries.
Doing all right.
It's
And
sad
just,
to say,
you know,
food comes last.
uh,
Alice from Oregon. I thought pantries were for less fortunate people.
oh, okay. You
But
know what?
anybody could be less fortunate
I'm going
in
to
a
add
day or
someone
even a second. Claire from Virginia.
at 7.
The
Okay.
Feeding America network of food banks helps provide
Okay, yeah. Can I just have their phone number?
I will
each
send
year.
that. No, I will send it to
No
you because we're
one
on.
should have to worry where
we're
their
on
next
here.
meal will
What I will
come
do
from.
is send it to you
Together,
by.
we can end hunger.
I will send it to you by
Stand by.
text.
By feedingamerica.org.
Okay.
Okay.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Okay. How much time do we have?
We're about to come in.
Okay. No, let me know. Remember, 1 minute and then count me in. All right.
We can change the world.
Will do. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Please meet my morning stars, Andre and Robert and Dave and Joyce, and so many right over on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please, everybody, like and share. We're trying to grow our viewership there. Facebook has reached out. They want me to do that. They want you all to shift over from Facebook over to YouTube. Please help me out and do that. And meet me on Twitter on the Santita Jackson, at Santita J. At Santita J. I guess it's now known as X. It's now known as X. Let's talk about this UAW strike, which is earth-shaking. This is more than 150,000 workers. And remember, these are corporations, and our media now is corporate-owned media. So the media are giving you the mainstream, the so-called, well, not so-called, the corporate-owned media are giving you, they're trying to kind of, well, they're giving you the corporate line. These people want a 32-hour work week. They want to work fewer hours for more pay. They want to work 32 hours or 40 hours a week. Well, it's not quite that. The U.S. auto industry was in trouble once again in 2009. This is what we saw Lee Iacocca become famous for in the 70s, helping to save Chrysler. Well, the whole industry, the whole American car industry was in trouble in 2009. And they said, look, if you don't cut back on cost of living increases and your pensions, we are going to go broke. So the unions, the UAW said, okay, what we're going to do, we will forego our cost of living pay increases. We will forego our pension collections so that you can get on your feet. So they did get on their feet. And car prices went up by 40%. Good news. 30%, that's good news. CEO pay went up by 40%. Okay, that's great. But UAW wages only went up 6%. And the cost of living increases, that didn't happen. And their pensions. Okay, so that's what this strike is about. Okay. And seeing someone make 20, 30, 40 million dollars a year while you're told that you need to just be happy to make $18 an hour. Well, that's not working for folks. So they have taken a stand. They're like, no, and this is something we're coming into what they're calling Striketober. Unions are regaining their strength, and they're fighting back. Remember, President Reagan broke the unions. Who would think that he would fire a whole class of workers as necessary as air traffic controllers? And we've not recovered yet. So let's talk about this today. So call me about what you think is fair for labor. We're all workers. 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Let's talk about it here on the Santita Jackson Show. It's a big day, and we've got to talk about it. So let's get to some of these headlines. The UAW workers went on strike against the big three automakers, Stellantis, which used to be Chrysler, GM, and Ford. The first picket lines are targeted plants in Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri, where they have high output. The union's 150,000 workers seek better pay, hours, and benefits. This is a post-COVID world, everybody. President Biden is suddenly facing personal and political challenges. The Justice Department indicted his son, Hunter Biden, yesterday on charges of making false statements and illegally possessing a handgun. This is the first time this has happened to a sitting president's progeny in the history of the nation. Wow. And the White House slammed the probe announced by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy as extreme politics at its worst. That is an impeachment inquiry. It's challenges on all sides for President Biden. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will visit Washington next week. France banned sales of the iPhone 12 because of radiation levels. Maybe we should be on the lookout here. The search for survivors continues in Libya, everybody. Up to 20,000 are feared dead, according to authorities, but the true toll may never be known, according to press reports. The destruction is so massive. We got to pray for the people of Libya. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 73 degrees. It will be clear. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 73 degrees, but showers. In the NFL, the Eagles were triumphant over the Vikings last night, 34-28. In Major League Baseball, the Twins defeated the White Sox 10-2, and the Cubs will be facing the Diamondbacks tonight, and the Twins and the White Sox will face off once again tonight at 6:40 p.m. Then the WNBA playoffs, the Mystics will be meeting the Liberty tonight, and those are the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. The anointed, the brilliant Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams joins us. Of course, she's the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Bridgehampton, New York. We're always glad to have her. You've got to get her book, I See You, Sis. Go on Amazon. It is going to bless you. She's talking about great women of the Bible, Bible. Isn't it interesting, Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams? They just don't want that beloved disciple to be married, do they? I had to throw that in there. I'm not the theologian that you are, but I always found it interesting. I said he revealed himself to her first. She was the one who traveled with him. He didn't travel with the disciples. He traveled with her and two other Marys, but they don't want her to be beloved. Okay. All right. Well, I'm just thinking, just wondering aloud. Just that was interesting because that Bible was not edited by God. It was edited by man. So there we go.
Mhm.
Who decides what books are going to get in, what don't get in? Oh, but I digress. It's great hearing your voice today. How
Great
are you
hearing your.
today?
I'm well today. I hope you are too.
And we've been praying for you because we know that you knew your father has gone to be with the Lord, and know it's tough, but we just want you to know that we love you. We're praying for you, and just hoping that you rest in the comfort of all of these precious memories. Just sending you so much love.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you and everyone so much. Prayers and thoughts means the world.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that is helping me on this grief journey is gratitude. You know, one of the things that we learn early on is 2 words: please and thank you. And I have found, Santita, that gratitude is the key to so many things. Gratitude is the key to grace. Gratitude is the key to moving through grief. But I've also found that gratitude is the key to greatness. It's the key to abundance. I just want everyone to take a moment to just take a deep breath and just fill your heart with gratitude and explore the incredible connection between gratitude and greatness, gratitude and abundance. I've started a new daily habit where I don't allow my feet to touch the floor until I wake up and thank God for at least 5 things. 5 things, 5 instances, 5 people, but 5 things, because I found 5 to be the number of grace. When we cultivate a grateful mindset, we open ourselves up to receiving more blessings, joy, and abundance in all aspects of our lives. First, gratitude shifts our perspective. Gratitude is like the rose-colored glasses we always talk about. It allows us to see the world in a positive and abundant light. It shifts our focus from what we lack to what we already have. So every morning, I'm inviting you to take a few moments to reflect on the blessings, great and small, in your life by appreciating the present moment and counting your blessings. You invite more abundance, more blessings to flow into your life. Gratitude is the key to the law of attraction. The law of attraction states that we attract into our lives what we focus on. So don't focus on what you don't want. But when we express gratitude for the things we already have, we're sending a message to God that we are ready to receive more, that we've been faithful over a few things and we're ready for God to make us ruler over many. When we consciously choose to focus on the positive and express gratitude for them, we're blessing God. That's a form of worship. And that positive energy will attract more abundance and opportunities to you. Gratitude amplifies joy. When we practice gratitude, it amplifies our joy, our contentment, and our overall sense of well-being. You know what? It's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of material possessions or achievement, thinking that they're going to bring us happiness. But happiness is not joy, because happiness is predicated on what happens. Joy always burdens deep within. I always say it's like the pilot light in a stove, because that's where joy comes from. That's where gratitude comes from within. So when we appreciate the simple pleasures in life, the relationships and the experience in our lives, we tap into a never-ending source of joy and fulfillment. Gratitude and joy are your pilot light. And so when we cultivate a gratitude practice, we make it a daily habit. So start your day with a gratitude journal, or just start your day expressing 3 things. Maybe 5 is too ambitious for you, but start with 3 things that you can be grateful for every morning, even if all it is, which is no small thing, is, hey, I woke up this morning. Maybe you're grateful for a good night's sleep. Maybe you're already grateful for that cup of coffee you're about to have. Just think about how to start your day every day in gratitude, but not only for yourself, express gratitude to others. Take someone a message or share a word of with someone. It not only uplifts their spirit, but it helps to strengthen your connection with them. You'd be surprised what I hope you have a text will do for someone who's not expecting it or expecting to have a great day. And practice a mind of gratitude. Throughout the day, just stop, pause, and bring your attention to the present moment. What are you doing right now? Don't think about the past, because the past fosters regret. Don't think about the future, because the future fosters anxiety. But take a moment to appreciate the moment that you are in right now. I'm not on the road an hour from now. I'm right now with Santita on the morning show, wearing the morning stars, talking about gratitude. That's the moment I'm appreciative of right now. So when we talk about the good news is focusing on good things. Remember that gratitude is a powerful tool that can transform your life. When you cultivate a gratefulness mindset, you open doors to abundance, joy, and deeper appreciation for the blessings you already have in your life. So embrace each gratitude and watch abundance, watch greatness, watch grace flow freely into your life. I hope this inspired somebody this morning. And what's the good news today? The good news is gratitude. Have a great one.
I love you and what did you say? Happiness is what happens. What did Shirley Caesar saying? This joy I have, the world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away.
Take it away.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I needed that. I needed that today. Thank you for just always being so inspiring. And oftentimes our healers are wounded, everybody. They
That's
struggle.
right.
They struggle. And you'd be surprised at the rate of divorce in clergy marriages. People struggle. We're all struggling down here. And I thank you that, for just fighting through, your pain to get to the other side, to get, from, to, oh my goodness, I miss, to, wow, look at what I didn't miss. Dad, thank you for this.
Yes.
Thank you for that. I mean, as I'm looking at my father,
Yes.
because my father will be 82, and I'm watching him fight to live every day. Everybody,
That's
not
right.
in terms of breath, but he's not able to walk really anymore. And it's hard for him on a spiritual level.
Sure.
But I told him, I said,
Sure.
you stand to, I said, Daddy, don't you remember in 1984 when you were speaking at the Democratic Convention, you said, I'd rather have Roosevelt in a wheelchair than Reagan on a horse. I said, that's how I feel about you. I said, you are taller in this wheelchair than you've ever been, because I see you fighting every single day. And I see you fighting every single day. And I just want you to know I admire you, respect you, and love you, and appreciate you. And I'm thanking God for your example. Thank you, Pastor.
The same hope. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Have a phenomenal.
Love you. Get the book. I See You, sis. You want to hear about the great women of the Bible? Please get the book I See You, sis, by Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams. Go to Amazon. Go on and just get it right now. Go on and get it right now. Dr. Shanina Knighton, what is on your mind today, my dear sister?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. So talk to me. What's on your mind? There's so much to talk. There's so much to to unpack in this moment. I don't see flu anymore. I just see COVID, and I know people are getting the flu. I know they're getting respiratory infections, and I know some people are also staying well. So, what's on your mind today?
Good morning. So I think the biggest thing, and I'm just going to keep bringing this up, is just the fact that we still need to be preparing for fall. And when I say preparing for fall, it's still just being cognizant of the illnesses that are going around. And yesterday we talked about the fact that if you are not preparing for your wellness, then you're going to be forced to prepare for or forced to treat your illness. And so I had a friend, it's actually interesting, your pastor, he said, what's the analogy that you be talking about with the gunshot or the wound? And I always say, would you rather prevent the gunshot or would you rather treat the wound? And when I say that, it does actually signify that same thing of which would be easier, avoiding getting sick or treating being sick, and which one is going to have the less effect on your life in regards to interruption. And so when I bring that up, I know people think that, hand hygiene is so simple. But we forget that there's still less than 20% that actually do it correctly. We forget that, not only is there less than 20% of people that do it correctly, but also we have to remember the important times of when we need to do it. I get it. The sports season is underway. People are back high-fiving. People are back, socializing. People, may not be aware of being out in public and touching rails or touching counters and doing things, that may allow them to come in contact with germs because they're touching commonly touched surfaces that other people may touch. So saying all of that to say about what are you doing when you literally are coming across environmental settings? What are you doing when you're coming across like other individuals? And while we always, of course, as we listen, to the good word every day, expect the best out of ourselves and expect the best out of other people, we don't want expectorant, which is congestion, or outcome of that being mucus because we're dealing with some sort of respiratory illness. And so I encourage people to be more mindful of their environments that they're in. So when you are going on the elevator, thinking about the elevator button itself and the fact that others have touched it and having in your mind, hey, I need to clean my hands when I get off. When you're getting on the elevator, understand there's longer 6 distance or only 2 people allowed on the elevator button. So being aware, is this elevator too crowded in order for me to be able to get on? When you're on the escalator, thinking about the same exact thing. When you are exchanging your card and handing it by someone, are you handing it to someone that also collects the cards of many others? So it's really being aware of what's going on. And it's also, too, I've seen so many people coughing and sneezing saying, oh, it's not a cold. It's not a cold. I got something stuck in my throat. Or, oh, it's not a cold. It's just allergies. At the end of the day, a droplet is still a droplet. It's still a droplet. And a droplet is still going to contain some germ that your body can tolerate, but it may be foreign to mine. So what that means is that, yes, somebody may have just a simple allergy, but it does not necessarily mean that they're not passing you particles for the flu. So just being really aware of your surroundings and being aware of what you encounter is one of the most important things that I can emphasize right now. In a season where having colds and being around people that are going to be ill is going to be much more prominent, is going to be much more prevalent than not being around people that are ill. And I know that sounds like something crazy to say, but when you have that, human monovariate, which is, again, another form of a respiratory illness, COVID-19, RSV, and so many others floating around, the common cold and allergies, it's so important to be aware of them and just stay prepared instead of looking at one individual virus.
And I thank you for that, because now employees don't have the space to stay off work if they're unwell now, if they're not feeling 100%, if they have a fever. And, we had that space at the height of the pandemic. If you're not feeling right, stay where you are. Now, people are being ground to a pistol, ground in the pistol, down to dust, which is what the UAW strike is about. The railroad strike. Can you believe these workers still do not have paid sick leave in the United States? Who does that? Think about it, everybody. Please follow Dr. Shanina Knighton at Hey Dr. Nina. Hey Dr. Nina. And can't wait to get that book when you write it, girl. Because boy, oh boy, you need to give us a how-to. Sending you so much love today. Let's talk about this UAW strike. What is fair for workers? It's about much more than 32-hour work week for 40 hours worth of pay. Real wages have not moved in the United States in 50 years. Think about it. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. How you doing, Dr. Knighton?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Oh, girl, I am doing well. Just doing got a lot of running to do today. And so there's that, got a lot going on. But it's all good.
I get it. Trust me, I get it.
I know you do. So, but I'm glad to hear your voice today. Okay, just so you can hear me pulling some other things down. Yeah, I had a full day yesterday, but I got a lot accomplished, which was great. It was a very long day. I think people don't realize well, I know folks don't, no one realizes what everybody has to go through to do their work. And a friend of mine has been very helpful, and I went out to dinner with her last night. But that crucial 3 to 8 o'clock is really critical for me because I'm like looking at the news, determining what we're going to talk about. So I was away from what I needed yesterday, and that was very hard. I need that moment. Not that moment. It's just and you have to be ready to, if you ever start hosting a show, just know this: you have to be prepared for the moment when your guest cannot be brought onto the air, which means you have to take over the show and fill the air.
Well, I bet. And I'm going to tell you, talking for 10, 15 minutes is actually harder than what people think, especially when you're trying to make sure that it's filled with valuable content and just where you want to make sure that you have effective messaging. So I've actually witnessed that you to pivot or you having to fill in on that segment. And so I already know that, it definitely takes your expertise to be able to, I would say, not be an expert in the area, but to be well versed about subjects.
Yeah, just all you're trying to do is you have to have this thing figured out because it will fall on you. It will. And and that's okay. But you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared. But I think I've got Dr. Julianne Malveaux with me. Dr. Malveaux? Is Dr. Malveaux there? Hello? Who do we have on?
We have Dr. Malveaux and Reverend Yuri here.
Okay, very good. Very good.
And we have just over a minute.
And we have just over a minute.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Great job. Great job, everyone. Dr. Malveaux, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
It's great hearing your voice. Thank you. We've got Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri there.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And Dr. Shanina Knighton, who always wants to hang out with us so that she can find out what's going on after she's done her health segment. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And so that's a blessing. Shanina, I'm really glad that you stick around with us, though. I really appreciate that.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you so much. That's just what I need. Okay. Okay, everybody, let's get to it.
We can change the world, change the world.
Stand by.
Thank you so much.
We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. UAW, the United Auto Workers, have gone on strike. This is 150,000 workers, and this is huge. Some people are beginning to call this Strike-tober. We're moving into October, and they say that unions are beginning to fight back. Sean Fain, the head of the UAW, says ultimately this is about corporate greed. In the 1970s, we remember when Chrysler was unthinkable, was on the verge of financial collapse. And so Lee Iacocca, their charismatic CEO, took to a media campaign appealing to the American people for help with taxes, for a bailout. And we came through because we trusted him, and Chrysler, which is now Stellantis, was saved. Okay, good. Well, the auto industry faced a similar crisis in 2009. The big three, GM, Stellantis, which was Chrysler, and Ford. Okay, so they go to the cost of living increases. Please put them on the shelf. Those pay increases and your pensions. We need all the money that we can get, because if we don't get it, if you don't cut back, workers, if you don't cut back, we're going to collapse. We're going to lose the American auto industry. Ford will fold, GM will fold, Stellantis will fold. So the UAW said, hey, if you're out of business, so are we. So they made those concessions. And hey, just by the grace of God, these companies came roaring back. And so you saw the price of cars go up by 30%. That's great. You saw corporate CEO wages, their pay went up 40%. UAW wages went up 6%. That's right. And now you have Jim Cramer from CNBC, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who's saying this is class warfare. Yeah, the working class are telling the billionaire class, you need to be fair to us. This isn't right. So we've got you and Reverend Dr. Todd Urey from the national leadership team of Rainbow Push. Of course, you both have been at the automotive conferences. And while we've been very, very happy to have Dr. Malveaux, as you know, because you're one of the cornerstones of, you really are chief economist at Rainbow Push, quite honestly. You're like, wait a minute, you remind us that we're union people. Now, we love the corporate CEOs, but we are here to help you to remain fair to all these people. And now you're seeing that the UAW had to file unfair labor practices against Stellantis and GM because they said, you're practicing, what you're doing is unlawfully refusing to bargain with us in good faith. There's a lot to unpack here. I just wanted to kind of lay things out for people because the corporate media, as Senator Bernie Sanders said, Dr. Malveaux, they're giving you the corporate line. They're telling you these people what they want is unreasonable. 40 hours a week for 32 hours a week pay. So workers can be fighting with each other, Dr. Malveaux. And it's not that simple, is it?
It's not that simple at all, but on the other hand, it is simple because predatory capitalism extracts surplus value. And what's been happening is the worker value has been extracted. So the stock prices went up last year 20%. For Ford, it was 30%. GM, 20%. But wages went up 6%. So somebody's making money, but it isn't workers. Your intro was absolutely spot on. Workers did major givebacks to keep the companies in business. They conceded. They didn't fight it. They conceded because they wanted to keep their jobs. Now, where is their ROI? Stockholders are getting ROI. CEOs are getting ROI. Let's not even talk about CEO salaries, but workers are not getting ROI.
Now, what is ROI?
Return on investment. Mm-hmm. So when you choose, you have a contract that says you get paid so much, you choose to turn some of that back for the benefit of the company, you're making an investment. Where's the return on your investment? This contract needed to be the return on investment. And they just, I saw the head of Ford on CNN yesterday. He was horrible. His entire staff, we've done all we're going to do. Okay, now the union's saying, no, you haven't. You're going to do more, y'all. And I think the way they're doing it is brilliant. 12,000 workers are out today. 12,000 out of the total 150,000 workers for the combined three. And so they can, if this is settled in a week or two, it'll be a blip. But if it goes on, it's gonna cause supply chain delays, and we know all about what happens when that occurs.
Well, let me ask you this.
It's going to cause
because you're putting a lot out here, and I want to kind of stop you at different points because you can really help us to flesh all of this out. This targeted approach to the strike that you said was brilliant. Why is it targeted? Because they've chosen 3 high-producing factories, 12,000 workers to pull them out today. Why is that a brilliant strategy?
Because everybody's not out. It means that the union has about an $825 million strike fund. They could take everybody. Everybody could walk off today and they could stay off for 3 months. But that may not be the most effective thing because They don't want to go on strike. They're being forced to go on strike. So targeting these 3 plants slows production down. It doesn't stop it. If everybody goes out and stops production, that would actually, frankly, have a cataclysmic effect on the national economy, because auto represents about 3 to 4% of all workers. That may be a small number, but that's just auto. There are several industries that feed into auto. People do auto parts manufacturing. That doesn't show up in the plants. It shows up outside. So the smaller companies that supply the big 3, they'll be affected also. So if you just will shut down, it will have ripple effects. That's why so many were expecting or hoping that President Biden would get involved, because, you know, he is a union guy. But I have not heard or seen that he's done anything to date. But it's brilliant. It's like showing your strength without using it all. It's like, you know, you have a big stick and you put the big stick out. Say, I have a big stick. And if they say, no, you don't, and you hit something and break something with the big stick, but you don't tear it all up. So it's like a gradual. Now, let Mr. Ford keep telling wolf tickets and see what happens. But I'm hoping, I have two thoughts. As an economist, I know that this will be cataclysmic for the economy if it goes to a full strike. As a union gal, as you say, I'm a labor economist. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, go y'all, go, because labor has been asleep. And
they were knocked out, right? I mean, they were knocked out in 1981. Yeah. I mean, that was horrible. I mean, wiping out a whole class of workers. What did that strike do? Wiping out the PATCO, wiping out the air traffic controllers. What did that do?
It frightened labor. It made labor far more cautious. Made labor go along with things, I mean, such as a 2-tiered wage, what they're trying to reverse now. But the 2-tiered wage was something they never would have under the days of George Meany or any other. They would not have agreed to that. But after seeing the weakness, experiencing the weakness, and just the obdurance that you saw, with government, they were like, uh-oh, maybe we better go along with this. And let me take a quick minute, Santita, to talk about the 2-tier wage, because what it did, you had the long-term workers had a certain wage, and if you joined the union, you joined work in the union after, I forget the year, but after a certain time, it was maybe the early 90s, you got a lower wage. So the base wage was different for more recent workers, which made more recent workers somewhat angry with the union because they felt y'all didn't have our back. But the union felt our backs were against the wall. So I admire the new leader of the UAW. He's firm, he's smart, and he's not playing. I admire the approach that he's taking. I do not admire at all what the bosses are doing. They basically are like, this is it, y'all. They refuse to talk about, they just want to talk about money. They don't want to talk about the other things, but they must talk about the other things.
And Jim Cramer is saying, this is class warfare.
Said, yeah.
Got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it is class warfare. It's been class warfare since the predatory capitalists started exploiting people. And that's what's happened. I mean, the union heyday was post-World War II, really, into the 60s. But this is important to us. It's important to everyone, especially anyone who has who's working class. And quite frankly, in some ways, we all working class. You see these actors and the writers here in Hollywood. I tell them, man, you call themselves creative workers. They're also workers.
You're workers. The actors are workers.
Exactly. But the challenge here, when we're looking at how we're going about this in terms of class warfare, those words are alienating, but people don't understand there has been class warfare. Anytime you basically see people, there's a report that came out of the Institute for Policy Studies called Executive Excess. So CEOs making thousands of times more than their workers, thousands of times more. Live Nation of Man makes $139 million a year. The average worker makes like under $30,000 a year. Come on now. That's class warfare. How dare you frame class warfare in a way that is disparaging to workers. Y'all are the warriors, and y'all have no class.
Reverend Dr. Charles Todd Yeary. Wow, she just kind of gets me on that. But she's absolutely right. I mean, what do you see? And what are you seeing? I mean, because this is going to, as Dr. Malveaux said, wow, this can really, this is a headache the Biden administration does not need. They do not want. Nobody wants it. Quite frankly, I think it's going to be a problem for everybody if this is not handled. And I think these workers are serious. I really do.
Well, good morning, Santita, and to Dr. Malveaux in her economic and analytical genius. A couple of things historically. You mentioned the PATCO strike in 1981. Mm-hmm. I was an air traffic controller in Chicago for 13 years. I'm a son of an air traffic controller who was fired in the PATCO strike. What folks don't remember about the PATCO strike is the issue of timing to be able to leverage collective bargaining. The PATCO strike happened after a second strike vote. The first strike vote was not successful. And the reason was, at the time, it was in the middle of the 1980 presidential election. Ronald Reagan had promised, in exchange for kind of the PATCO union support, that he would be with the union workers. And so they kind of blinked a bit. I remember it because I was, with my dad that summer. I remember the night that he came in early and they decided not to go, and he was mad as you know what. I think the strategy this time is you don't blink. If you don't take advantage of the rules of collective bargaining, which is a matter of timing to be able to force negotiating in good faith, you find yourself coming away with less than you should get, and you end up with these disparities where corporate execs are making hundreds of times more than the median income of the average worker in the corporation. The other part that makes this genius, of course, one of the other things I used to do is I used to sell cars. Yes, indeed, I did.
You have done
About
it all.
This time, don't tell nobody. Don't tell anybody.
I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at used car sales. I can see that.
Well, I sold used and I sold new. And one of the things about the inventory is if you think about how the models come out, factories tend to retool at about the summertime. And so this is about the time you start seeing production for the new model year begin to ramp up, and you start putting pressure on existing inventories through your dealer networks. And so if the old models are sitting there and the new models are not coming in, you're really kind of creating a disincentive for folks to buy, particularly when they're trying to expand now the access to electric vehicles, which tend to cost more, and it takes longer to actually sell them. And so now the automakers are going to have the crisis of not only the pressure coming from the negotiations for the union contract, the dealers are going to begin to start screaming and squawking, because if they don't have the inventory relief to get rid of the stagnant inventory, the local dealerships are going to end up running into bottom line issues as well. So it's not just the economic fairness, it's the pressure that the corporations that go right to the bottom line and through the dealership network that's going to cause this to work. And it's a matter of timing. If they did not go last night, if they would have said, okay, we'll try, even though they say this is it, we'll keep going, then it wouldn't really get management's attention. Because remember, there's shareholder interest, so you got to look at how much the dividend payouts were. You got to look at how corporate execs are compensated, not just in terms of cash, but in terms of stock options, which are tied to the profitability of the corporation at the expenses of the workers. And so when this comes down to everybody's balance sheet, when the balance sheets of the folks who have to go in every day to drive the economic benefit for the corporation, if they're not getting their, as Dr. Malveaux said, their ROI, their return on investment, which is personal and collective, then you create this standoff. And the standoff has to work on behalf of the benefit of the workers, because in a production economy, your highest single cost is and your highest value, your highest commodity is labor. It is labor. So if the workers don't get it, and they don't get it now, you'll find out that you'll blink. There'll be a second strike vote, and the controllers will go out and they'll make a move that leads to a transition with ripple effects. I hired on as an air traffic controller in 1989. It was 8 years after the PATCO strike, and the FAA still had not recovered from the harm that had been done, and PATCO never got its footing back. And the current union really has more administrative bargaining, not the strategic bargaining that it could have.
Dr. Malveaux, you're a labor economist. Number one, what is that? I mean, is that a perspective? I mean, and what do you see? I mean, just what do you see? What do you see? UAW. It seems that Sean Fain, he seems to be really strong. I mean, he's like in the George Meany tradition, right? As you pointed out. I mean, and Addie Wyatt. Excuse me. Let us not forget the first Black woman to be at the top of the union movement in the United States. Addie Wyatt. Of course, she was a pastor here in Chicago. What about? I mean, because there was a time, Jimmy Hoffa. Say what you will. These people. This is when unions were at their strongest. Reverend Willie Barrow. She came out of the union movement. I mean, they produced leaders. Charlie Hayes, Congressman Charlie Hayes. I mean, these were people, and they went into and Gus Savage. These people went into Congress. They went into corporate America. They went into their spaces and fought for workers. They did not blink. It seems that now. You have that in Sean Fain. It seems like that. So what does that mean if he does not blink, if the union members don't blink? Because it seems like this is the time, Dr. Malveaux, I hope I'm not misreading this, where workers are saying enough. Enough.
Absolutely. First of all, you asked what a labor economist is. We study the labor market. We study what goes on in the labor market and why and who's in the labor market. Many African American economists do labor work because it was more meaningful to us. A Black man in a union makes about a third more than a Black man doing the same work who is not in a union. For a Black woman, that number is 25%. And so a number of Black economists, especially in my generation, I think that younger economists are all over the place, which is a good thing. We shouldn't all be in labor. But a number of us were attracted to labor economics. Our stalwarts, Bernard Anderson, David Clinton, they were labor economists, and they were our mentors. And so that's, and let me please mention the late Bill Spriggs, who's my colleague and untimely died at 9 just a few months ago. Just 3 months ago, actually, and we still miss him. But in any case, they're right-wing labor economists. They study the labor market. They come with totally different perspectives. I mean, there are labor economists who think the minimum wage should go up. There are labor economists who think the minimum wage should not go up. They would argue that if the minimum wage goes up, there are going to be fewer jobs. We already know that hadn't happened all over the country. 24 states have a minimum wage that's higher than the federal minimum of $7.25 an hour, which has been $7.25 an hour since 2009. Thank you. I mean, so the people at the bottom haven't seen a raise, in more than a decade. But that's move on to the Sean. I always mess up.
Because it's like Sinn Féin, they're correlative in Northern Ireland, freedom fighters also.
But he's firm, he's smart, he's strategic, and he's doing the right thing. It does come out of the tradition of an Addie Wyatt, of a George Meany, of those labor leaders who basically were unapologetically pro-worker. And there has been something in the past couple of decades, the professionalization of a labor market has ended up with some disdain for regular working people who don't have degrees, who work with their hands. We have no right to have disdain for anyone. Everyone makes this economy go round. It's not, the MBAs and the PhDs are important, but not more important than the people who basically make your cars, serve your food, and all of that.
And so fix your homes. I mean, come on. Nothing sexier than HGTV. They're the trades. And the Food Network, they're the trades. Come on, y'all. Really.
But, labor's had enough. And one of the things that's happened, this is a challenge for President Biden. while the economy seems to be buzzing along nicely, this could cause major damage not only to the automakers, but to those ancillary industries that feed into it. Not to mention, when you look at these three places, what are the restaurants around there? Well, you know, how are they going to be affected? How are others going to be affected? So it's really, you know, you could look at economic losses in the billions of dollars if this strike goes on. Now, Rain has said there's not going to be no conversation today. There will be no bargaining today. Good for him. But on Monday, I hope that the big three have put their heads together and come up with something that's more worker friendly. What they have right now is not worker friendly. They asked for 40 over 4 years. That's not unreasonable. He's offering 20 over 4.5 years. See, this is how slick that. So half what you asked for, but over 4.5 years. Why put that extra half in there? So really, what they've asked for is basically 10% a year. What they're offering is 5, maybe 4.75% a year because of that extra half year. I ain't feeling it. And the union is, it doesn't matter what I'm feeling, the union is not feeling it. And that's why their fearless leader, I consider him fearless, is holding firm. Now, I imagine that hopefully they will come to some kind of an agreement, but it would need to be over that 20% that they're offering. It needs to be something closer to 25 to 30. And I hope they hold out for it.
Yeah, because they started at 40, right? 40 plus.
Yes, they did.
And, you know, and honestly, I didn't have a problem with that. I was like, look, nothing is cheaper in the United States, Dr. Malveaux. I've got 30 seconds for you. Nothing's cheaper.
No, nothing is cheaper. And that's the challenge that President Biden has, is even though the economy is doing well, gas prices are back up. Food prices are back up. Nothing is cheaper, and labor deserves a raise.
Labor matters, everybody. Dr. Malveaux, thank you for being with us today. Cannot wait to have you back. I knew you would set the table for us. I love it. She said, really? It's 4:30 out here. Yes, she's in California. Well, come on. Brilliant mind. Absolutely brilliant. The president emeritus of Bennett College for Women, MIT-trained PhD economist. Indeed. And she is the co-chair of Push Excel, along with Judge Greg Mathis. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. We love you, Dr. Malveaux. Can't wait to have you back.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Sending you so much love. Dr. Yuri, stay with us as we continue to explore what's happening. John Nichols from The Nation magazine will be joining us, along with attorney Mark Fancher, who is in Detroit. He's in Detroit. Got a lot to unpack here. This UAW strike, it is on, and it is serious. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Well, I didn't know you had been an air traffic controller. Honey, you are what? A Jamaican on steroids. You've had 20 jobs. Like, what?
Yeah.
I'm going to call Rhoda.
I was an air traffic controller on 9/11.
Oh, were you really?
I was indeed.
Oh, my gosh. And you know, I was supposed to be on my way home that day. At 8:45 is when I would have landed in New York. I always took the 6 a.m. flight out of Chicago. Because, you know, I like to have my day. Either I take a red eye or I take the first thing smoking to get into or out of a city. And what was it like to be an air traffic controller on that day?
Well, first, it was pretty chaotic. It was the first time in my career I'd ever had to show my ID at the intersection by the center, the regional center, be able to get into the facility and have my car swept by a SWAT team. Hmm. But when you got in and you realized that airplanes were being forced down at the nearest airport involuntarily, pilots were confused. You had military pilots scrambling to escort commercial flights down that didn't want to take the clearances. And then that afternoon, if you remember, President Bush went from Florida to Omaha to what we call the bunker. And then later that day, he went to D.C. I remember I was working what we call the D side, the manual control side, next to the radar controller, who actually worked Air Force One going back to D.C. that night. It came right through Chicago Center's airspace. And that was the first time I had ever seen Air Force One fly that fast over the ground on a regular day in my entire career. And so much of it was surreal. And then watching.
Oh, no, you all. Don't tell me this happened again.
What happened?
Okay, look, we've had some crazy things going on in the board. Oh, but just keep on talking. You would never see, and everybody wanted to be on the south side that day. People were running from downtown. Oh, that was hilarious. I said, "Oh, y'all want to be on the south side and west side today? Okay, I got you."
That was a very open conversation. Look, where you going? I'm going to the hood. But they ain't looking for us now.
They ain't coming for me. Oh man, you cannot make this stuff up. Oh, this is a lot. This is a lot. But I'm so proud of these workers, and I'm really, 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 really pulling for Sean Fain because he appears to be someone who is holding the line. He is not playing. But people out here are hurting, Todd. They're hurting.
Yeah.
And folks don't have any money.
Yeah, I think in their leveraging, not only should they get a base commitment, they should also leverage indexing of worker pay to executive pay.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But he said, look, this is corporate greed. And I think so. I think he's on that track. I think he's on that track. And so that'll be interesting. He said, this is just corporate greed, really. And so,
Miss Jackson,
yes,
we have Attorney Fancher and John Nichols here.
Oh, fantastic, John Nichols.
Yes, hi, Santita.
I know we got you running today. We've got Attorney Mark Fancher. He is in Detroit, one of our top civil rights and civil libertarians, and so I'm glad that he's here. And of course, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, he's here as well. But, we'd love for you to set the table for us from your perspective about this. Boy, oh boy, this is interesting. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thank you. Good morning.
How's my bison doing?
Well, he's a senior in 21, and you can't tell him anything.
Oh, now there you go. What dorm is he living in? Is he living in a dorm or is he in an apartment?
No, the university is contracted with a housing complex in College Park for Howard students, so he's one of the lucky ones.
They're now in College Park?
Yeah, they've got a shuttle that runs there all day long, all night long, to get them back and forth. So.
And how long is the ride?
2 minutes?
An hour to 40 minutes.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
College Park.
Yep.
It is nice out there too.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So okay.
But he's been there since the beginning, so he's grown accustomed to it. So
yeah, because really, you become a DMVer,
Mm-hmm.
You really do become a resident of you understand DC, Maryland, and Virginia when you go to those schools. In Howard, it's like, please, you jump up to Morgan State, then you start doing the college run. With you go down to Virginia Union. You go to the different games. I used to go to A&T because my brothers were there. We were all in college at the same time, and when I tell you the fun that we used to have, whew, oh goodness. It makes me breathless.
Well, I don't know if I want to hear all the details. Might make me nervous.
Oh no,
about what he's going through.
No, not with us.
Joking.
No, I hear you. But boy, we had some fun. And but one night we got caught in a snowstorm, and my brothers called it was just a big mess. I mean, we had the sheriffs coming after us. because we had to drive like 10 miles per hour through a snowstorm. We didn't know we were driving into, my girlfriends and I were driving into a snowstorm. My brothers knew. They were frightened. Oh, something's happened to my sister and her friends. I was like, we're just
30
fine.
seconds.
But we have pulled over to the Waffle House.
Yeah, well, big brother's got to look after you, you know.
Yeah, but then they called Dad, who made a lot of calls in North Carolina, that was frightening to get pulled over by the state police. Miss Jackson, your father's looking for you. I'm like, is everything okay? Is my mother fine? They're like, everybody's fine. They're worried about you. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh, terrible. Okay, stand by, everybody. We're coming up. Hey, one love from the Black Line. My love to you.
Stand by.
Okay, thank you so much. You're doing a great job.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world.
Thank you, by the way.
Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820. The nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is, we're talking about labor. We're talking about labor. Labor matters. Workers matter. The UAW 150,000 strong. They are on strike. They have a targeted strike, 12,000 at three of the highest producing factories in the system. They have the potential to tie up the whole economy. Now, that's not what they want to do. They said, we made concessions in 2009 to save the American auto industry. We gave up pay increases that were tied to cost of living. We gave you our pensions. We said, we're going to do whatever we can to save you, because if I save you, I save myself. But somehow or another, the CEOs don't quite get that. After they came out of their difficulties, their compensation rose by 40%. Car prices rose by 30%. Worker wages, 6%. Let's talk about it. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's get some of these headlines so we can get to this. The UAW union went on strike against the big three automakers, Stellantis, which was Chrysler, Ford, and GM. We'll be talking about that with John Nichols and attorney Mark Fancher and Reverend Dr. Todd Urey in just a few minutes. President Biden is suddenly facing both personal and political challenges. The DOJ indicted his son Hunter yesterday on charges of making false statements and illegally possessing a handgun. This is the first time in the history of the republic that the child of a president has been indicted while their father has been president. While the White House slammed the probe announced Tuesday by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, this impeachment probe, calling it extreme politics at its worst. It has been quite a week. President Zelensky of Ukraine will visit Washington next week, and France banned sales of the iPhone, 12, because of radiation levels. A French regulator this week asked Apple to stop selling the model first released in 2020 and threatened to implement a recall. Scientific research on cell phone radiation and health remains inconclusive, but something made the French say, do not sell it here. Wow. European standards are very strict. Apple disputed the French regulators' findings, but they're holding firm. They do not want that phone sold in France. Think about it, everybody. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 73 degrees. It will be clear. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 73 degrees. There will be showers in the NFL. The Eagles were triumphant over the Vikings last night, 34-28. Major League Baseball, the Twins 10. The White Sox 2. Perhaps the White Sox will come back tonight when they play against the Twins at 6:40 p.m. The Cubs will be facing the Diamondbacks tonight, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. In the WNBA, the playoffs, the Mystics will be facing off against the Liberty. As we roll into this segment, talking about the UAW, I want you to know that even in these tough economic times, you can become a homeowner. That's right, the cornerstone of the American dream, the most expensive and most valuable purchase that most Americans make is a home. And many of us have not been buying homes. First-time home buyers are continue to fall. That's concern for Fannie Mae and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They said, if we're not buying homes, that we're not as stable as we need to be. So they've implemented a program that Team Hochberg wants to familiarize you with that will enable first-time home buyers, people who've not owned homes for 3 years, people who've not owned homes for the past 3 years. You might have owned one 4 years ago, but if you haven't owned one in the past 3 years, you could be eligible for this program. So I want you to call 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or go to 56david.com and find out about the program. If you're a Chicagoan and the total household income is under $105,700 and you've not owned a home in the past 3 years, this program might work for you. So call them. And if you are having trouble meeting your mortgage, if you think that you're going to have trouble meeting your mortgage, if you're trying to avoid foreclosure, or if you're in it, Team Hochberg can help you. Call them at 855-46-DAVID, 855-46-DAVID. If you need to fix your credit, they now have a credit card that can enable you to take your score up 100 points over a few months. You can go from the 500s to the 600s, from the 600s to the 700s. Yeah, you can do that, but you got to get their credit card. But you need to call them so that you can find out all about their financial products that can help you become independent and prosperous. So call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Ask about this homeowners program and find out about this credit card that will enable you to reestablish your credit, rebuild it, not just build it. You can use a credit card for that, but you can also rebuild your credit. All right, everybody, let's get to this UAW strike. It's a big, big deal. Worker compensation has only gone up 6%. Of course, this we're watching, what is it, 670 to 1? John Nichols, national correspondent for Nation magazine, 670 to 1, the executive excess report from 2022 from IPS, Institute for Policy Studies, said that the gap between executive compensation and working compensation is that's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Well,
so talk to us. How do you see this strike?
Well, I see this as the most important strike of our time. And there's a reason for that. It's not to diminish the strikes being waged by other workers, because every strike matters a great deal. But historically, the United Auto Workers has been the union that has led the way for the working class. Going back to the 1930s, it was the UAW that was, in many ways, the defining union in the industrial sector. Didn't mean that other people didn't work hard, didn't mean that other people didn't do vital work. But because of the nature of the automobile in American society, when the UAW went into contract negotiations, the country kind of paused and said, okay, how's this going to work out? Because if there was a strike, that was something that was going to ripple through all industries and through all of society. That has changed a lot. The UAW is not as big, the auto industry not quite so definitional as it was in the past, but still we have a situation in this country where the United Auto Workers tends to be the union that calls the question, that asks, where do we stand from an economic standpoint? And what they are saying at this point is, first and foremost, workers have sacrificed immensely. They didn't just sacrifice during COVID, although in many cases they risked their lives to make sure that production continued. They have sacrificed for decades, going back even to when the auto bailout came. It was the unions that accepted, deep concessions in order to make that bailout work. And going forward, they've sacrificed a great deal in pay, They've sacrificed cost of living increases. They've seen setbacks as regards pensions. They've seen multi-tiered pay scales so that younger workers are not paid at the same rate as older workers to do the exact same work. And so there's been a real diminishing of their position. What the UAW is saying is, we want to be made whole. We're not asking for more than our share, but we are asking for our fair share. The executives, the CEOs, they kept expanding their salaries. They kept getting more bonuses and stock buybacks and all sorts of benefits, but the workers did not. And so now they're saying, we want our fair share. But they're also saying something else, Santita, and this is a big deal. They are talking in these negotiations about three things that matter a great deal. First and foremost, the transition to electric vehicles. This requires a different sort of production, and they are saying they want to make sure that that production is kept at union plants where workers are fairly compensated. They want to make sure that that production is done in a way that respects workers and makes sure that they can continue to do their job, even as the nature of that job transitions. Secondly, they are saying that in this period of rapid automation and transference of how we do work, that they want to make sure that the workers are not put in a situation where they're forced to keep up with the machines at an overwhelming level to produce a great deal more, but not necessarily to be paid for it. So they're asking for a 32-hour week, that they would work a 4-day week, but be paid for 40 hours. And that is not, that may sound extreme, but it isn't. What they're really saying is they want to be compensated for their sped up work. They also want to make sure that all the workers are still able to have jobs in a changing industry. And then Santita, the last thing they're saying, which is not much reported on, but a really big deal, is they want the right to strike in order to keep factories open. They want to be able to fight back against factory closings. And that is a huge deal for working class towns across this country, because if they have that right, then we finally have a way to push back against the closing of auto plants. And let me emphasize, when an auto plant closes, as in my state of Wisconsin, we saw in Kenosha and in Janesville over the last 15 years, major auto plants shut down. That has a devastating impact on a community, and it's also often short-sighted. Those plants are still potentially productive, but the companies make a mistake. What the union is saying is, we want a right to be at the table and to put pressure on these companies in situations like this. So that's what's at stake here. If the union wins this contract in some form, not necessarily with everything they've asked for, but if they win a fair contract, that sends a powerful signal for the rest of the industrialized sector. And frankly, it sends a powerful signal for workers across all sectors who are dealing with these core questions of how do we, wrestle with the transfer and change of industry? How do we deal with automation and AI technology? So in every way you think about it, this is an incredibly major strike being fought by a little over 140,000 workers. About 13,000 of them are out on strike right now. But if the companies do not bend at least somewhat to these reasonable demands for the workers, you will see more and more of the workers go out on strike. And this will become more and more of a factor as regards where our country is headed.
You are up in Detroit with these workers and in the midst of the auto industry. Attorney Mark Fancher, what do you see?
No, I'm just picking up on what Mr. Nichols just mentioned, and the implications of this are far-reaching, far beyond what many people contemplate. For those who are concerned or upset or traumatized by the MAGA phenomenon, the Trump success, part of that has a lot to do with the devastation of the Rust Belt, where companies have shut down plants, left people without employment, without opportunities, and they become frustrated and demoralized and subject to the messages of demagogues like Trump. What this strike means is that it is a way of preventing more of that. Because what many don't realize, but which is clear to those of us in Michigan, is that it's not just the major plants that are producing the automobiles themselves, but there are all kinds of affiliated companies, affiliated industries that are dependent upon the auto industry. So you have in small towns throughout rural Michigan little companies that manufacture parts that they supply. And sometimes these little towns depend upon the employment provided by these small companies. And so if the auto plants, are not functioning well, if there's something wrong with that, then it affects everybody. It affects all kinds of things. So, we have to be cognizant of the far-reaching implications of it. But beyond that, I just always presume the amorality, if not immorality, of major corporations. And I think that this brings into stark relief the contradictions that have always been present in the relationships between owners, management, and labor. And you see, as was described, the continuing increase in the compensation for CEOs and others at the top, while things remain stagnant or go the other way for workers. And this helps to bring that into focus. It helps people to continue to realize just how unfair that relationship is, and how the workers are essentially just trying to get what's fair, what's just for workers. And what they're asking for is very reasonable. I mean, who can deny that a worker who has dedicated so much of their time and labor to the production of a product should not be entitled to a good, strong pension for that day when they can't do the job anymore? Why shouldn't they get cost of living increases just like everybody else that are fair and reasonable? And these are among the kinds of things that they're asking for, but which because of its arrogance, because of the insensitivity to the plight of workers, many times management just ignores. So the last thing I'll say, right now about it is that we've seen generally an upsurge in organized labor across the country. All kinds of people, all kinds of workers are organizing, even like Starbucks employees and things like that. Students are organizing, faculties at universities are organizing. And so I think that, the success of this strike will help to further inspire that. And I think that that's what this country needs. What the world needs is for major corporate leadership to be put in its place and to be controlled. And, personally, I would like to see organized labor move back to where it was in the early 20th century when the international workers of the world, nicknamed the Wobblies, were dead set not just on getting fairness, in terms of compensation and working conditions, but they were dead set on essentially destroying the capitalist system and putting the means of production in the hands of the workers. That's where we need to go, at least as far as I'm concerned.
These last couple of minutes, I know you've got to run, John Nichols. You said something that really resonated with me. These workers just want to be made whole. I don't think, I know while Jim Cramer is screaming up that this is class warfare, blaming Sean Fain, saying that he's unreasonable and that these workers are unreasonable, the corporate media, and these corporations side with corporations, Water sees his own level, they're not telling that story about how these workers saved the industry in 2009, how they gave up, what they gave up, and they said, we just want it back. But you guys don't even want to give it back. Am I wrong here?
You're not wrong at all. They were promised. They were promised that they would be made whole. They just never were made whole. That is the simple reality. And a few things to reference here that I think are important as we finish up. First and foremost, you're absolutely right about the corporate media. We're seeing it already. There is a effort to portray the union as being unreasonable, when the union is simply making the basic asks that the workers have demanded. Remember, unlike the CEOs of Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors, the president of the UAW is elected by the workers. In fact, Sean Fain was recently elected in a very contested fight, and they chose him because he said, I'm going to go out to every plant. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear what you've been through, what you want, what you need, and then I'm going to take that to the bargaining table. That is all that he has done. What media should be portraying is the reality that the UAW has leadership at this point that's very closely tied to the workers, that's in touch with what has happened, and that knows that this industry, as you say, was saved by its workers. Back in 2008, 2009, when the management had brought the industry into a place where it was in crisis, there was no question of that, the workers accepted deep concessions. They gave up a lot, and they did it because they wanted to make sure that those plants remained open. Now, there was an element of self-service in that. Of course, they're of these communities. These workers, they want to have their jobs. They want to have their communities continue to have good industrial jobs. They want to make sure that their children, if they want to go into the industry, can work in it. So that's understandable. But those were all noble goals. And so they sacrificed immensely for this. They gave up their cost of living increases. They gave up potential increases in wages. They allowed for a multi-tiered wage sector so that as a result, young workers were paid less than older workers who do the exact same work. They did all sorts of things to reduce costs for the companies. What happened? It succeeded. The industry was saved, but more than that, Santita, this industry has been making massive profits over the last decade or so. This industry has made $250 billion. I want to emphasize that, $250 billion. In the last 6-8 months, this industry has made over $20 billion. That's money pouring in to the CEO's checking or savings account, pouring into the investors, but not going to the workers. And so what these workers are saying is, look, out of those massive, massive profits, there's enough to give workers what is their due. And you'll hear people running around now saying, executives of different companies saying, oh, if we did what the workers asked, if we'd done this, we would have gone bankrupt. That's not true, number one. But also that doesn't recognize the circumstance that we are in. Cars cost more now than they did in the past. Profits are higher. So the workers are asking for their share going forward. They're not even asking for what they gave up in the past. They're not saying, oh, we want all of it back. We want everything. They're just saying, moving forward, we want to be made whole. We want to be, given our fair share. That is not an unreasonable ask by any measure, and it ought to be portrayed as such in the media. This is a really big deal. Right now, just looking at the basic facts of this, 75% of Americans say in the recent Gallup poll that they support the union, that they're on the side of the union. There's overwhelming understanding of the need that these workers have. The corporations and the media will try very, very hard over the next few days, the next few weeks, to portray the workers as greedy, to suggest that what they're asking for is too much. What we have a responsibility to do is to get the truth out, to tell the real story of what has happened, and to make it clear that these workers are not greedy. They are not making unreasonable demands. What they are asking for is what any worker who has sacrificed would ask for, and that is their fair share.
Give it back. I lent this to you.
Yeah.
Give it back.
Yeah.
Reverend Dr. Uri, I want to hear from you on the other side. We're going to have also Teddy Ostro. He is from the Real Network News. He was actually there watching all this happen live. And he is also from In These Times. He's written for The Nation. Brilliant podcaster, the Upsurge podcast. Cannot wait to hear from him. But I want to hear you. I want to hear your reaction. Of course, John Nichols, we will hear from you on Keep Up Alive on Sunday. Yes. And stay right there. Attorney Mark Fanshaw will catch you before you go to church on Sunday on Keep Up Alive. And Reverend Dr. Uri wants you to react to what you just heard. Give it back. Give it back. Give it back. Don't fall for these games that corporate media are going to play. They're already telling you. They've already set it up. They want more pay for less work. That is not true. That is absolutely untrue. They made concessions. They gave their money to the companies so that they could be saved. Corporate wages, the CEO's wages, their pay moved up 40%. They get tens of millions of dollars. The car prices went up 30%. Their pay went up 6%. How can that be fair? Remember that. 40, 30, 60. Those are the key numbers. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Can't wait. I'm going to be looking out for you this weekend. John Nichols, sending you much love. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Oof.
Thanks, Santita. I'm going to run, but I sure appreciate the conversation.
Oh, look, I appreciate you. I'm glad you were able to extend it a little bit. But I mean, wow, what a hot mess.
It's good that they're out. They're doing it in a responsible way. This is a doable strike. The question now is whether the companies will recognize that it's for real and begin to bargain in a sincere way. The unions are willing to, they're willing to bargain here. They're not going to be so rigid that you can't get to a deal. So the bottom line is that it's at the company's door. Are they willing to do this? They could get this settled this weekend.
Of course they could.
But my fear is that they want to try and see if they can wing public sentiment against the union. Like
Of
go
course.
out there and do a PR campaign. That's why this moment's so critical. This is kind of the knife's edge moment where if we have an honest discussion about this, as we just had here, then I think the union can win. If the discussion isn't an honest one, if it isn't a fair one, then we've got a real danger here, because if the union doesn't win, then it's going to be so much harder for other unions to go forward. So it's a big deal moment, and I'm glad to talk about it.
It's a crisis, but it's an opportunity. People need to understand who the media really represent. When you see Jim Cramer on CNBC jumping up and down, when you hear how the questions are framed to, I saw Stacey Davis Gates, the head of the Chicago Teachers Union. She's been taking a lot of incoming fire because she has a son in private school. And when I heard that, her other two children are in public school, I said, something's good. I said, her son must be, because my nephew is in high school now. He's a freshman. And he is a really an excellent basketball player who's a college prospect at 14. I said, her son must be an excellent basketball or baseball player. He must be an excellent athlete, football player. Because you don't just go to the public school. When you are a high school bound top athlete, you now have to go interview schools. It's like going to college, and you have to sit with the coach. You see who you're going to like. It's not as simple as that. But all the questions, and I love Abby Phillips, but all the questions that she lobbed at Stacey Davis Gates, they were corporatist. How dare you send your child to this private school? I'm like, De La Salle is not only an academically outstanding institution, but it's a powerhouse sports school. Yes.
We have Teddy Ostro on the line.
Teddy
Sorry to cut you
Ostro.
off.
Okay, well, I'm running my mouth, but I'm going to let you go, and I will see you on Sunday.
I appreciate it. And
a minute, 5 seconds
on this discussion. It is such an important discussion. And the one thing I'll emphasize is that if you see news reports that don't feature leadership of the UAW and only feature corporate folks, right, or corporate analysts, flip to something else. Because the only way reporting is if you actually have the voice of the workers in that reporting. That's what's vital at this point.
Do you know Teddy Ostro? Do you know him from the?
I do know Teddy.
Okay, he's right here. Teddy,
brilliant. And
hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, gotcha.
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. We're letting
so
John Nichols go.
on.
Oh, Teddy, I'm going to have you back. You're going to say what? She's calling me again. Okay, and you're on with attorney Mark Fancher. He's up in Detroit, brilliant civil libertarian lawyer, and Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, brilliant lawyer, and he's part of the national leadership team at Rainbow Push. He is in Baltimore, between Baltimore and Chicago. So stay right here, Teddy. I cannot wait to hear from you. Ooh. Remember, we're pushing the podcast.
Right.
We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're talking about the UAW strike. This is huge, everybody. It's a targeted strike at the moment, but the union, rank and file, voted to go on strike. Remember these numbers, 6, 30, and 40%. Remember, the unions saved the companies in 2009. They said, look, the companies came to the unions and said, look, we need you to forego your cost of living pay increases and stop the pension payments because we are about to go broke. And they said, you know what, if you're out of business, we're out of business too. So, okay. It's just when you come out of this hole, of course, the understanding is that you will pay us back. So they said, okay, we need to be paid back. And in the post-pandemic world, people see work a little bit differently. They're like, you know what, I'm not going to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and miss my family. That's unfair. You're asking too much of anyone. And so they're saying, okay, a 4-day work week, 32 hours for 40 hours paid. Mind you, the wages have not moved 50 years in this country. That's all they're asking for. Many of these people already have second and third jobs. And the companies are pulling back. The reason I said the number 6%, 30%, and 40% are important is because since the auto industry came back, car prices have gone up 30%. They're making money. They made $250 billion over the past 6 or 7 years. They've made more than $20 billion this year. Okay. Well, let's keep on going. CEO pay, it's gone up 40%. Okay. Yeah, but worker pay has gone up 6%. Something about that is not right. I want you to follow the Upsurge podcast. Teddy Ostro is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant reporter. He's written for The Nation, In These Times, The Real News Network. We love the work that he does and need you to follow his podcast and tell everybody about it because he's giving you the latest on the ground information about what's happening with this strike. And so we're so glad that you're with us today. Brian, I promise you, from Joliet, before I get to you, Teddy, and to you, Attorney Mark Fancher, and Reverend Dr. Huey, let me go to Brian. Brian, you called in today. What's on your mind, sweetie?
Oh, good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
And I am all in support of the strikers and what they're doing. I think it's long overdue since we've been having the union breaker and trickle-down economics since 1981 with the Ronald trickle-down economic theory and the destruction of unions. And I have to stress that violence is not going to be the answer. It has to be as peaceful as possible, the strikers. And I think that we also, in relation to this, I think we need massive marches and rallies, peaceful ones, and we have to see this all in light of what's supposed to go down on September 30th of this month in terms of the debt ceiling, where all these people may be losing their Social Security and Medicare or what's left of it, when we should be having Medicare for all. And I think in terms of the attitude of the media, one has to be very cautious about believing what their analysis is, because frankly, everyone you're looking at TV is either a billionaire or a multimillionaire, and their needs are not the same needs as the strikers, and also in general. And also, we're throwing the U.S. government, who's ever President Biden or whoever else is backing him on this, we've thrown at least over $100 billion into Ukraine, and that's money that should be used within the United States to end all poverty, homelessness, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we have to keep what could become what is a kind of quote cold civil war from becoming a hot one.
Absolutely.
Where all kinds of violence takes place. It has to be nonviolent, as peaceful as possible. And those are some of the comments I'd like to make.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you. I mean, and I will tell you, as we bring you on Teddy Ostro of the Upsurge podcast, everybody, please tune into that. The Real News Network, In These Times, The Nation magazine, you've written for that. When you see violence at these protests, they're generally paid saboteurs. They're not the rank and file. They're not the rank and file. Remember that. These people learned from the civil rights movement. In fact, they were the backbone of it. They don't have violent protests. They have peaceful demonstrations. So think about that. Teddy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for mentioning the Upsurge podcast within these times in the Real News.
I keep mentioning it because I want people to support In These Times and the Real News Network, because you all do such brilliant work. And I know we're going to be able to get, really what's happening. What is happening? Because you were like up to the minute. I was catching you just before the whole world knew what was going to happen. And thank you so much for sharing that information last night.
Yeah, that's right. We were on the phone. I was zipping on over to Wayne, Michigan, because at midnight last night, the deadline, which was established by the UAW, ran out. No contracts were in place, and plants at all the big three automakers were officially on strike. And this is the first simultaneous strike at the big three. that we've seen in its history. So right now, it's not all the plants. It's roughly just 13,000 workers in total. 3 plants, one in Michigan, where I am, in Ohio and Missouri. And this is a pretty unique strategy by the union. There's a lot of important elements to this. But they're launching what are called stand-up strikes, which is a reference to the union's sit-down strikes, which were in 1936 and 1937. And this really propelled the union at the time, establishing the conditions for what would eventually become a much larger upsurge in the labor movement. And the strategy was really the secret selection of specific plants to stand up for a strike, with the possibility of further plants standing up, and even potentially all plants going out. And so according to the union, that's to maximize the leverage of the negotiating committee, keep the companies guessing where they'll be next. So I was last night at the Ford, Michigan assembly plant, which is west of Detroit. And, they're obviously sending a message that this is the renewal of the union, which has suffered tremendous loss since its height of about 1.3 million members, down to below the 400,000. And, that's by fighting and winning a very good contract, hopefully for its big 3 members who have been made to go through serious concessions since the Great Recession, even farther, back than that, 1980s. We're talking about companies that have made $250 million in North American profits in the past decade. CEOs making $20-30 million in compensation, while workers' wages have fallen behind by about 30% in real terms. So this is very much about taking back what's been lost and setting the stage for a further upsurge.
How would you grade, because you've also worked with fairness and accuracy in reporting? Jim Cramer was screaming that this class warfare and the corporate media, they're de-emphasizing what the workers did to save the industry in 2008 and 2009. They're emphasizing the fact that they want to work fewer hours for more money. And that's not what's happening here, Teddy Ostro, from the Upsurge podcast. I mean, how would you grade what the corporate media, how they are presenting these issues?
Well, mainstream media loves to scaremonger. They did this in the lead up to the potential UPS strike just last month. And of course, they framed Sean Fain, the president of the UAW, as this sort of demagogue with unrealistic demands, like a 32-hour work week. We heard that about 100 years ago, or less than that, but from Walter Reuther. So this isn't like a new idea. It's important to know that. But, they emphasize how much damage might be done to the economy. And what they really mean is how much damage it will be done to the company's profits, which often has very little to do with working people, working America. They've shown they don't particularly care about the needs of the workers. What they don't emphasize is the damage that will be done to working America will be much higher if the auto workers don't fight for a better contract and they don't set standards that will raise the livelihoods of all of us and that will help spur organizing of the foreign auto plants in the South, which is a really important issue that will ensure our green future is being built by excellent jobs, because the EV transition is a huge element of this. There's a sense that all this will do, and the mainstream media, they believe, will create economic havoc, when in reality the companies did this to themselves. When you have an organized union, organized workers who know their worth, they're going to fight for it. They're going to say, hey, we're only 5% of the costs that go into building these vehicles. You spent billions in stock buybacks, shipped out billions in dividends. Rarely see those numbers in corporate media. You actually, they're saying you can be profitable, give us everything we want. And honestly, if you ask me, it's in the interest of these companies. The UAW wins big here. That means they can go and have a better chance of organizing other companies to equalize the playing field, take labor out of the competition. And in the long term, a class struggle, which seems to be the long-term path of the UAW at this point. The companies won't be so happy, but in the medium term, it's clearly in their interest. Media doesn't understand it in those terms. They're kind of just shilling for these companies.
Where do you see that they are shilling for these companies? And I mean, and I keep pushing out these numbers, and I don't think we can emphasize that enough. That the way that this strike is being conveyed to us is not true. It's not giving the workers' perspective. I mean, and that is our perspective. We're all workers, Teddy Ostro. We were.
Right.
And, and it's not just the factories, it's the cafes and the stores around the factories. It is the small towns where people live or the towns that they live in. It's whether you can buy a house or not, whether you can send your child to school. I mean, and we're seeing America collapsed, not just collapse. It's like, wait a minute. Some of the finest schools in the world were in Michigan. And it's no accident
Right.
that the auto industry is based there. Motown came out of Detroit. I mean, Berry Gordy was an assembly worker, as were the members of his family. He was able to get his money to start Motown because his parents had stable jobs, his family. They had stable jobs in the auto industry. And I don't, and I'm hoping, but I think more and more Americans are supportive of these workers. What do you see?
Yeah. I mean, I think just across the board, we saw polls show 75% of Americans are back in the auto workers. I think 2-to-1 margin, they support the workers on the side of the strike. I mean, I think people are looking around across the country, whether it's the actors, the writers, the hotel workers, UPS workers, they're saying, okay, class consciousness is coming into stark relief. There's this billionaire class that is stealing our wealth, the wealth that we create, and we need to fight back. And if I could speak about some of the demands, I mean, these are demands that are particular to the auto industry, but they're also demands that kind of resonate with millions of people around the country. This fight is really about getting a bigger piece of the pie for workers who have been exploited by the big three. They've been worked to the bone in tough conditions, long hours, low pay. And it's no wonder then that some of the key demands, not only of these auto workers, but elsewhere, are major raises. The auto workers, it's over 40% over 4 years, which would be in line with the raises of the company executives, which they've made over the last 4 years. Reinstatement of COLA, which was introduced, I believe, in 1950, and was lost after the bankruptcies of GM and then called Chrysler, which is now Stellantis. And a really big one is that ties in a number of issues is the elimination of wage and benefit tiers in the company. And we've seen this in many different workplaces at UPS. They just eliminated one of the tiers among delivery drivers. This is a huge demand. We're seeing it now in this fight. And basically what that is that workers who were hired after 2007 don't get pensions, or good retiree health care like their predecessors. And that's terrible because these jobs often hurt your body, damage your body. You're loyal to this company for 30 years. You get carpal tunnel, even maybe something worse, get surgery, and then you don't get a pension at the end of your time there. You don't get retiree health care. You don't get taken care of. And also that in order to get to top rate, they have to work years and years, 8 years to make as much as someone else on the assembly line, for example, who's doing the exact same job. Sometimes it takes even longer because another issue they're trying to address is these companies exploit temps or temporary workers. They hire people with even worse wages and benefits. They can lay them off at any point in time, drag them along for years before making any of them permanent and eligible for better pay and benefits. And UAW is saying no more. Hire them in 90 days, which was a condition in previous contracts. Just to rattle off just a couple more of these demands, another has to do with a shorter work week, 32 hours. I mentioned this, 32 hours a week, paid at 40 hours. These workers work 10, 11, 12-hour shifts, just like a ton of people across this country, whether they're working multiple jobs or one job that's working them to the bone, harming their bodies doing it. They don't get to see their kids grow up. And just in general, the 40-hour work week, thankfully, the new president, Sean Fain, is calling it out for what it is, an outdated standard for our lives. We deserve more time for ourselves, and companies can afford it. And the last thing I'll say is that, this is also about the right to strike over plant closures. There's been 65 plant closures across the big three over the past 20 years. These companies, and in particular, recently Stellantis, which was previously Chrysler, just picks up and goes, either to a union unfriendly state in South or even to Mexico, where the workers make roughly $5 an hour doing the same work. This decimates communities. It tears families apart as some people have to get up and leave, sometimes 5, 6, 7 times to keep their seniority and work at another plant across the country. It's just not right. These workers want, their ultimate leverage, the strike, to put an end to these pretty truly evil actions by the company.
We're talking with Teddy Ostro. He is the host of the Upsurge podcast. Please, everybody, become a member, join it, support it. He also writes for In These Times, the Real News Network. He's giving you up to the minute coverage of this strike. You're not going to get any better news and at a clearer perspective than his. And so that's why we're honored to have him here with us today. And we need you to honor the podcast, the Upsurge podcast. Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, I mean, what do you make of all of this? I mean, because it just seems these are basic rights that these workers are fighting for. You've got the corporate media pushing back against them. I just think it's an opportunity also for people to see just how unfair this is. I'm like, we need to kind of really see just how the game is played.
Well, I think the easiest way to depict this is in a graph. And if we go back to key points where public dollars were used to preserve the auto manufacturers, quite honestly, right? We saw it at the end of Bush 43's administration. We saw another infusion of dollars in the middle of the COVID pandemic. If we go back, let's just say to the gas crunch of the 70s and track corporate exec pay in the auto manufacturing industry, and at the same time track average worker pay and just graph it out, just show it. What you will see is that graph, that the delta, the difference between the two gets wider, much wider over time. And so the amount of money that they want to argue whether or not this is okay, it's class warfare, however you want to frame it. No, it's a math problem. It is a basic math problem. What you have seen is the enrichment of a few at the expense of the many we would call the workers, whether we're talking about corporate execs, whether we're talking about, oh, by the way, the paid members of their corporate boards who benefit as well. So let's start naming them. When we start looking at what the dividend payouts have been over time to the shareholders, let's talk about who are the major shareholders who are just sitting there collecting. Many times those shareholders are actually the executives because part of their compensation is in stock options. If we put the math out there, this is a basic math problem. This ain't real complicated. If we start talking about who's getting paid and for what, I think at that point you then push back against this false narrative, this propaganda that somehow or other you have folks who are just trying to be greedy, don't really want to work, they want to get paid more for doing less. All of that false narrative is okay, fine. If that's where you want to go with it, let's see if we can disrupt who's going to get paid over time. And so if we can't get paid a dignified wage, if our human dignity cannot be affirmed in the process of bottom line profitability, if those who are unjustly enriched continue to be enriched at the expenses of the masses, then the masses not only have a right, they have a duty to push back against that injustice, and the rest of us have a responsibility to support them in that effort. Otherwise, we continue to build an ever-expanding oligarchy of a few in America, and the working class just become pawns on what is the new plantation of corporate slavery, which is an affront to the principles of liberty and human dignity at a human rights level. And so we got to frame it in a way that just puts it in stark contrast. What does one person, a corporate executive, need with 300-400 times the average pay of the average worker? What in the world do they get for it, and what genius do they bring to it? Most times they don't even know what the average worker does or what the process is that they're administering. It is really for the process of trying to manage shareholder relations and public relations to be able to continue to exploit labor for corporate benefit. So let's put a graph up. It's a math problem. This is not class warfare. It's a math class.
I'll make it alliterative, and it's also a moral problem because, you cannot have these corporations without these workers, and you don't need to use strike breakers. This is awful. But you know what? We're going to see how this is going to play out. Attorney Mark Fancher, a couple of minutes go to you.
Yeah, I just would like to suggest that we embrace the term class warfare because there is a war against workers and management started it. I mean, you just made mention of strike breakers. You made mention that there are thugs that have been used to beat up people on picket lines. There's this crass exploitation that we've seen. So I think many times workers and those of us who are among the humble masses, because we're fair-minded, because we believe in justice, we expect the same from management, but they don't deliver on that. They're ruthless. They're at war against us. And I think that has to be the mindset of those who want this to succeed. And I think that generally, even those of us not in the union have a role to play here. We have to stand in solidarity of those who are striking and make it known, because there is power in the known will of the masses of people. If you just look in Niger, the masses of the people in Niger have stood down Western imperialism. They have just come out into the streets and said, don't dare come in here and try and start a war in our country. And imperialism has backed down. There is power that we have, and we have to remain true to the interests of working people, humble people, the masses of people, people who've been excluded. Jesus said, love ye one another. That's the way that we show love, by standing firm and understanding that people who are trying to do what they're doing with respect to these negotiations are not people who are not engaged in war. They are.
It is class warfare. It absolutely. Teddy Ustro, this is the final minute belongs to you, the Upsurge podcast. Everybody watch it. The Real News Network. Please follow them in these times. That's where you're gonna get the real news, the best news about this. Teddy?
Right. I think, the last thing I want to say, just so people emphasize, because we're talking about larger forces here, but also there's the organizing of working people. This is a really important point. The reason we are where we are at the UAW is because there's a new militant leadership there. Sean Fain and other leaders rose to power after a rank and file movement led by the Unite All Workers for Democracy caucus, of which Fain is a member, pushed for a member referendum to get one member, one vote of top officers in the union. Now we have a Democratic union at the UAW. Fain was the first democratically elected president, and he's coming out swinging. He's talking in class struggle terms, that this fight is not only about the auto workers, but about the broader working class, fighting back against the billionaire class. We've seen changes at the union in terms of transparency. He gives these live streams to the members, updating them on bargaining. When you speak to people, they feel the sea change from the previous administration of the union. The demands they used to make of the big three were called the president's demands. Now they're called the members' demands. They ran a contract campaign for the first time this year. They're organizing the shops. So there's a deep culture of abiding by strikes at the UAW, but not this grassroots organizing culture. That's what they're trying to do here. To try to win for the future, not just here, but further on, to organize the shops in the South, to organize the joint venture EV plants. We're seeing the beginning of real class struggle unionism at the UAW, and that's very important. And you can hear all about it on the Upsurge podcast within these times in the Real News. That's how we're covering this in class struggle terms.
I love it. Now, there you go. Everybody, I'll see you on Keep Up Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson on Sunday, 7 to 9. Go to iHeart, get your app, and look up Keep Up Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Hope I can get Teddy on the show, and we'll be joined by, of course, Reverend Dr. Todd Geary. Hope I can get you before you go to church, Attorney Mark Fancher. Thank you, my team in studio at WCPT. You're both brilliant. Sending you so much love. God bless you, everybody. Have a great day. I wish I could get some rest on tomorrow. I've got to work on that day too, but it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Sending you so much love, everybody. Teddy, are you still there? Reverend Dr. Geary, you there?
I am here.
Okay. And Attorney Fancher, are you there, or have you left the building? Okay, give us a closing statement before I run out the door.
Get some rest.
Oh no, please. I got so much stuff to do today, but it's all good. It's all good. And I am going to come home and actually take a nap, because that's one of the things that pneumonia has taught me. Get some rest. So, but your thoughts?
The thoughtful way in which the strike is being approached is one of gradual pressure. When you only have 1/10 of the actual membership base of the UAW having gone out and targeting disruption, it's really to get management's attention. It is a different approach that allows management to decide how they're going to negotiate in good faith. It leaves room for the union to manage the labor action responsibly, ease into it, be very creative with it, but also keep the element of uncertainty there. Because when management doesn't know what's coming next, I think it forces them, because what they want is they want to know what they know. When they don't know what they don't know, it creates a different level of opportunity to be able to address workers' issues. But it also forces management not to play the game that somehow or other they're just going to be able to message. This ain't classic class warfare as they want to call it. It is a fight between those who are working and those who aren't, right? Those who get paid for just, kind of sitting there. I'm still trying to figure out how you get one of those good gigs where you can make, 2 commas, right? You forget what the numbers are. All I know is that when the execs get 2 commas and the workers struggle to get 1, we've got a punctuation issue, and we got a whole problem.
Yeah.
So let's just deal with that. And when you start looking at who else gets paid by multiple commas, because the commas always come before the dot.
Absolutely.
Zeros can come on either side. And that's the problem, that fundamentally the corporations are making just untold money. Many of them, most of them, to the tune with the bailouts over the last couple of decades, almost $250 billion in bottom line profit. Trillion, not billion.
Oh no,
trillion.
they're making the money, and people are out here. And these folks are making. It's awful. I mean, it's awful. And the fact that they are being allowed to lie, tell all these falsehoods, it's a mess. But look, I am running today. I'm getting out of here, but I want you to know I love you, and I will speak with you on Sunday because we will be talking about this, and we need to. We need to. This is a really big deal, everybody. It's a big, big, big deal. And I'm so glad to see labor and workers waking up and understanding their true worth and value, because we can't make it without us, can we? I love you, everybody.
Well, big shout out to the Real News Network, Baltimore born. Some of my good friends are part of the Real News Network team, so they do great journalism.
They really, really do. And he does great work. The Upsurge podcast, everybody.